What is going on, guys? One thing that I get asked a lot in regards to my MacBook Air is how well can it run the Adobe Creative Suite apps? And I've been asked that even more now that CS6 has been released. So that is what we're going to talk about today. Specifically, we're going to focus on the two apps I use the most and definitely the ones I get asked about more often, and that is Photoshop and After Effects. Before we get started, I just want to point out the specs of my Air. It's essentially the top of the line that you can buy as of right now, with the 1.8 gig i7 processor and 4 gigs of RAM. The first thing you'll notice when you launch these apps on the Air is how quickly they open up. Of course, that is all due to the SSD, which is definitely a big change if you're used to a traditional hard drive. The test I want to show you guys in Photoshop is called the radial blur test. It's a fairly common test that's been used for several years to kind of benchmark computers in a real-world way with how they handle images. If you'd like to run the test yourself on your own machine, I'll have a link to this site in the description. So we don't have to make this a really boring video and watch this. I've sped it up, and of course one of the great things about Photoshop benchmarks is that you can actually see the timing on them. Once the process is complete, this is what the image looks like, and if you look at the bottom left corner, you can see that it took 64.4 seconds. Going back to the website, you can see how that compares to other processors. Moving on to After Effects, a lot of people look at me like I'm crazy when I say I do video editing and compositing on the MacBook Air. Of course, it's not really ideal for this, mostly because of GPU limitations, but it's definitely workable. And speaking of GPU limitations, one of the biggest drawbacks of using CS6 on the MacBook Air is that its GPU is not compatible with ray tracing. Of course, it doesn't take anything away, it just means it takes longer for you to do that type of work. So for this example, I'm just going to grab some footage. This is the same footage I used in my video about the 3D camera tracker. And for these kinds of tests, I really think they're better than the basic kind of just straight up technical benchmarks, because they really show you the program in a real world type situation. So we're going to go ahead and use that new 3D camera tracker and see how long it takes it to figure out all those 3D tracking points. Once again, this footage is significantly sped up because let's face it, you guys don't want to hear me talk for 5 minutes while all these points are figured out. But speaking of those 5 minutes that it took, I really think that's pretty good and on par with previous generation MacBook Pros, and definitely good for a portable machine running this type of software. If we go back into screen capture mode here, you can see that it found all the points and seemed to have solved for the 3D camera fairly well. We'll go ahead and just insert some basic text here so we can fully test it out and I can show you guys how well it works. Alright, that looks pretty good. Now it's time to actually export and render. And this is the thing that actually surprised me most during these tests. What you see here is in real time. This is not sped up. Now granted, this is an extremely simple composition. It's just one 3D text layer. But you can see it works really well. And this is also transcoding to H.264. As with any benchmark testing, this is really meant more of as a guideline than to actually show you specific situations. So you can really just kind of transfer this in your mind and imagine how much longer or quicker this render would be with something more complex or something more simple. And if we take a look at the finished product, this just doesn't look that bad at all. For you guys who absolutely want to see more CS6 stuff, you can check out this video that I made about the 3D camera tracker. If you think the MacBook Air is the most amazing machine ever made and you want to see some more of it, you can check out this video, which is actually one of my most favorited videos of all time. You can find me on Twitter, Google+, and Facebook. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.